Welcome, future human services professionals. Let's get right into it. If you're stepping into the role of frontline support within the Toronto shelter system, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're tackling a comprehensive explainer of Study Block 1. This covers the foundations, governance, and sector literacy of the Toronto shelter standards. Look, before you ever step foot onto a shelter floor, you absolutely need to understand the structural and ethical ground you're standing on. Throughout our time together today, we're going to consistently circle back to our first core pillar, foundational values. These values dictate literally every interaction you'll have, ensuring you deliver trauma-informed, deeply respectful care to the incredibly diverse individuals navigating this system. Okay, let's look at our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with our Welcome to Study Block 1, then move into systemic architecture and policy. From there, we'll cover the lexicon, frameworks, and values before diving into legislative accountability and practice. And finally, we'll wrap up with one of my favorites, Coach's Corner, where we'll do some test prep.
So, right out of the gate, the preamble of the Toronto Shelter Standards instantly defines our baseline mission, and it really anchors those foundational values we just talked about. This quote fundamentally shifts how we view our service. It clearly tells us that we don't wait for a client to, quote-unquote, fix every challenge in their life before they deserve a home. Stable housing is the primary need. Once that is satisfied, everything else, health, employment, personal goals, becomes infinitely more manageable to tackle.
Moving right along, let's explore Section 2, Systemic Architecture and Policy, the framework.
The crucial point here is understanding the Housing Stability Service Planning Framework. Think of it as a clear, structured bridge moving clients from temporary emergency shelter to permanent stability. The shelter system in Toronto is simply not designed to be a final destination. Your role within this entire systemic architecture is to act as a guide across that bridge. Everything you do, literally from the exact moment a client walks through the door, is about supporting that forward transition from a temporary crisis into sustainable, permanent housing.
Now, the diverse architecture of the system categorizes services to meet very specific demographic needs. Toronto doesn't just operate one generic, one-size-fits-all type of shelter. The system is structurally divided into these 5 distinct sectors. So why does this matter to you? Well, because while the foundational values remain exactly the same across the board, the specific supports, the daily routines, and the immediate needs of a youth client differ wildly from those of a family with small children. Knowing your sector inside and out is the very first step to providing competent care.
Let's move into our third section, lexicon, frameworks, and values, speaking the language.
You are going to hear this phrase constantly. Housing first is the central strategy of our systemic architecture, placing housing as the absolute primary need above all else. Listen, this isn't just a catchy buzzword. It is a strictly mandated service approach. It means your primary focus, whether you're doing an initial intake assessment or helping someone access their savings, is entirely geared toward finding and maintaining that permanent housing.
Let's quickly compare the operational differences between sector providers so you know exactly how the intake pathways differ. Emergency shelters? Well, they're your front line. Someone in immediate crisis can walk right up or call and get a bed if one happens to be available. Transitional shelters, however, sit slightly further along that systemic architecture bridge we talked about earlier. They require a formal referral, and they're designed for longer stays, where clients engage in highly specialized programming to prepare them for independent living.
I cannot stress this next point enough. Transparent, real-time SMIS data entry is the heartbeat of our systemic tracking and accountability. The golden rule is, if it isn't an SMIS, it didn't happen. This web-based system manages bed availability, tracks service restrictions, and holds vital case management data. Your absolute accuracy in SMIS directly impacts a client's ability to navigate the systemic architecture efficiently. Okay, let's dive into Section 4, Legislative Accountability and Practice, your mandate.
This is huge. Overlapping laws dictate every single standard of care we provide, ensuring the safety of both staff and the multicultural communities we serve. You aren't just following house rules here. You're operating under a dense web of federal, provincial, and municipal laws. Whether it's ensuring a crib in a family shelter meets federal consumer safety standards or abiding by municipal property bylaws, legislative accountability is woven into every single shift you will ever work.
So the absolutely crucial point here is connecting this provincial legislation directly to your daily trauma-informed LGBTQ2S+ inclusive practice. The Toronto Shelter Standards actively demand that we accept gender identity and expression exactly as defined by the client. We use their chosen name, we ensure access to the sleeping areas and washrooms that best preserve their personal safety and dignity. And guys, this isn't just a best practice, it is a strict legal mandate rooted in the Ontario Human Rights Code. It is legislative accountability in action. Every day, we strive for a collaborative environment that balances empowering rights with community responsibilities. Clients have the absolute right to a fair complaints process, to see their own files, and to always be treated with dignity. But on the flip side, they also have responsibilities to the community, to not engage in violence, to respect the property, and to work collaboratively on their service plans. It's truly a two-way street built on mutual respect.
And please, never forget that municipal health and fire codes are fundamental pieces of legislative accountability that protect everyone in the facility. You'll be conducting regular bed checks, monitoring for pest control issues like bed bugs, and ensuring sharps containers are safely secured. You must never, ever exceed fire code occupancy limits, even in extreme weather conditions. Keeping the physical facility safe is just as important as the one-on-one case management you provide.
All right, now for my favorite part. Let's step into the coach's corner for some test prep and scenarios.
I want you to imagine sitting across from a hiring panel. How do you prove your deep understanding of systemic architecture in your daily routine? When they ask you a question like this, they want to see if you genuinely understand that housing first isn't just a policy written in some dusty binder. It is the lens through which you view every single task on your shift.
You answer this by showing that every single action, from a trauma-informed intake to your SMIS data entry, acts as a bridge to permanent housing. You tell the panel that within the first 7 days, you're collaborating on a service plan that specifically includes housing and financial goals. You tell them you're actively connecting clients to harm reduction supplies or mental health supports, not as a rigid condition of their housing, but as a stabilizing resource to help them maintain it long-term.
Let's try another scenario. This one really tests your grasp on legislative accountability and those foundational values. A hiring manager needs to know that you are a safe bet, that you fully understand the heavy legal gravity of your role on the floor.
Lock this checklist in right now. Demonstrating your knowledge of these specific codes proves you are ready to ensure safety and equity on the floor. Mentioning the Ontario Human Rights Code shows you understand anti-discrimination mandates. Referencing the Fire Prevention Act shows you won't compromise facility safety. Calling out AODA proves you're committed to accessible, barrier-free service. Memorize this list. This checklist is your armor.
By internalizing our 3 core pillars, systemic architecture, legislative accountability, and foundational values, you aren't just memorizing and following rules. You are actively empowering client narrative sovereignty. You are giving them the safe, structured, and deeply respectful environment they need to rewrite their own story. So, review these concepts and truly master the vocabulary. Ask yourself, when a client in crisis walks through those shelter doors today, will your lack of knowledge be their barrier? Or will your mastery of these standards be their bridge?